First of all, our sexuality education program was started in year 2000 in response to specific challenges that are with us today. There are basically three main areas. One is that every year we have about 2,000 teenage pregnancies. And recently we've noticed also that the numbers of sexually transmitted infections, including HIV infections, were on the rise. Two, the numbers of these teenage pregnancies and numbers of sexually transmitted infections indicate that some youths are sexually active and are having unprotected sex. The third challenge is that our youth are exposed to many avenues where they can get information, including different views, liberal views on sexual activity and sexual lifestyles. So our sexuality education program, the main aim is to help them build healthy relationships, make responsible decisions, as well as teach them the consequences of unprotected sex. So we do teach forms of contraception, but teaching that has to be in the context of the values of society. It cannot be just a fact-based, because sexuality education in itself has to reflect the values of our society. And indeed, the values that we, in our sexuality education program, are what the mainstream society, Singapore society, believes in, which is a married heterosexual family with kids, and this is what we encourage, in line with our other social policies of promoting home ownership in terms of nuclear family and extended families. In most programs, you have to infuse values, because there must be the values underpin your sexuality education program, and the values that we use reflect the values that the mainstream society has, or the mainstream society believes and adheres to social norms that are currently present today. We don't seek to be ahead of society, and we cannot do that. That's not the way to do it in schools. We don't condone premarital sex. We don't encourage sexual experimentation. We certainly don't promote homosexuality. This has not been the framework, and this is not how it's been implemented. Because I think what we teach is what majority of Singaporeans believe, that most parents want their children to, have become parents themselves, get married, have children, and basically that's what our sexuality education program teaches. Well, we've made our replies about external vendors in particular unaware, so I won't be touching on that. But we're using this opportunity also to enhance our program, to ensure that that our sexuality education program is up to date and responsive to the challenges that I've outlined. Two, that we put in a more robust system to ensure that what is taught is consistent with our framework, and that our external vendors or external agencies that we use do adhere to the framework that is existing. And for this, we are strengthening a number of measures. One, for the program itself, we will continue to maintain the core focus on preventing sexually transmitted infections and teenage pregnancies, and on the positive side, to help our youth develop healthy boy-girl relationships and make responsible choices. So that doesn't change, and that will be continued, including teaching forms of contraception. But what we will enhance is, one, we will set up a professional panel This is a steering committee headed by the Director of General Education to make sure and to review that our program is up to date. When we started this program, our sexuality education program, that's indeed what we did. But we want to institute the steering committee to review it periodically. Now, to ensure that there is that we also get the feedback from views from parents and members of the community, what we will be doing is to ask Compass. Compass is an organization which of parents and community in support of schools, and there are members drawn from parents and community organizations that in this organization to help us go through the materials to give us the feedback. The chairman of Compass is Senior Minister of State Grace Fu. The deputy chairman of Compass is Mr. Masagos Zulkifli. So they will oversee that consultation. Then for vetting the external vendors, we will centralize it at MOE. Previously, we allowed schools, because of the greater reach and networking, to choose their vendors and to ensure that the vendors comply to our framework. We feel that it's more robust and gives us greater control to centralize this at MOE, where we have a committee within MOE to vet through both the contents of and to establish with the external vendors that they believe in and they will comply with the framework and values that are in our sexuality education program. This committee within MOE will not only vet the external vendors but institute regular periodic checks and audits to make sure that the delivery of it does comply to our framework. In addition to that, what we will be doing is to subject all external vendors afresh and new to this process, so that we have, so that we ensure a certain standard and a certain compliance. The other piece that we are strengthening the framework is to really empower, to give parents more information. As I previously said, what we've been teaching in schools has been put out in the public through VCDs, through CD-ROMs, through printed word. But we will seek to push out more information, including the materials that external vendors use when they deliver their lessons, so that parents have more information. With this information, we also want to streamline the process of opting out. If parents feel uncomfortable with the program, then they can opt out. The answer to your question is that it's very clear from the outset when we started this program that parents are mainly responsible for their children. We do not seek and we cannot replace the parents or become surrogate parents. We cannot overstep that line because parents are responsible for their children. At the same time, our teachers are sensitive enough to know that if they have particular problems that their students bring to them, some problems are so large that they will have to encourage their students to confide in their parents or to help them through the problems. So I would not put it as a clear line, and each case has to be judged on its own. The other point is that our teachers are trained up to a level in terms of being able to deliver the sexuality education program. They are teachers, they are not specially trained professionals for this task. So we have the help of trained personnel who are, for example, counselors, our allied educators, as well as these external agencies. What we will encourage the students to do is to approach their parents or avail themselves of these resources. And this is how we hope that through this framework, some of the needs can be addressed. We'll be able to solve all problems. We'll be able to mitigate them, but we don't seek to replace parents, and we cannot replace parents. It's still their responsibility. Well, the teacher may not be trained to handle that situation. And I think if the teacher feels inadequate, I don't think we should push to say and insist that the teacher is able to solve that query or to be able to answer that. And I think the guidelines to teachers would be that there will be other resources available, either through counselors or these external agencies that the parent and that student can refer to. We have not said that our sexuality education will be able to comprehensively address all issues on sexuality education. As I've said very clearly, our main focus is on preventing sexually transmitted infections and teenage pregnancies. Issues related to the homosexuality is a very small component and is not the main focus of our programs. Let me emphasize that. What we teach about homosexuality, we define what it is, that it's illegal in Singapore, but the government has said that homosexuals in private have their personal space, but that is not the main focus of our sexuality education programs. Our main purpose is really to reduce the numbers of teenage pregnancies, to reduce the proportion of teens who come down with sexually transmitted diseases, to help them build healthy relationships that lead to a heterosexual married family. That's the main focus. Well, in general, when we reviewed how it was conducted in the schools, we did a thorough investigation, going down to the schools, talking to the teachers, talking to students, looking at external vendors, and our conclusion was, in general, that guidelines were adhered to. There were not serious deviations from that. But in response to this situation, we wanted to give added assurance to parents and the community so we've instituted these new guidelines. We think that it will help provide assurance and also strengthen the system. In the use of external vendors, we welcome their participation because they do complement our programs. Our teachers teach the main program, but external agencies do have core expertise that make this program more effective in terms of achieving our goals of our sexuality education program. Now, we've made very clear what we teach in our sexuality education program. We've made it very clear what we mean, what are the values underpinning this program. External agencies who want to participate must share those values, must agree that those are the same values that they have, and will adhere to the general framework of what is being taught. There might be very well organizations who feel that they don't agree with this framework or the approach that MOE is taking. And for these external agencies, I would advise that a more productive way is not to be involved with us in MOE, but to submit their views to the steering committee which I've appointed, and which will consist of professionals, so that the professionals can weigh the merits of their argument. If indeed the steering committee feels that there's merit and that there are some improvements, they can change the program. Or if the committee feels, well, no, this is what we have in our framework is the right way, then they can explain to them why we will continue the way we're doing what we've decided. It's not productive for them to be engaged in our programs and either teach different values or teach different things that we've agreed on. The reason is that access to our students in our schools is privileged access. And if parents cannot trust what you teach in schools, or feel that you have a negative influence on their children, or teach them values which run contrary to what your framework says, then they cannot trust you, then the program cannot be effective. The third point, or more important point, is that our schools and educational institutions cannot become proxy battlegrounds for groups with contending ideologies. What we must stringently and strictly avoid is allowing our schools to go the way in some other countries, for example in the United States, where different groups with different views try to square off and try to settle their arguments in schools. If we allow this to happen, our schools and education system will be casualties and be worse off. We have to ensure that we keep our schools and educational institutions as shared space, and that our children learn best in an environment which is away from this emotional upheaval, this rhetoric, that they can be objective, that they can hear views and reflect on them and make their own decisions. I think that's the best way for them to learn. So I think that's a more important point, that our schools must maintain their shared space, and that we welcome the help of external agencies to deliver the holistic education, but they must not use our schools to further their own agenda. I think that has to be the understanding. I would frame my remarks for all external providers, external vendors. MOE will not be able to use external vendors unless the public can trust that these external vendors teach what has been agreed in the framework and subscribe to the values of our framework. It's just not effective. I mean, parents will have to trust that the external vendors do it within the understanding of the framework, because they are, if not, they have the option to opt out. But if they don't opt out, the assumption is that, well, I am allowing my children to receive this education with what has been agreed upon. So external vendors who don't share this, I think it's not productive for them to be involved. And if we feel that parents cannot trust these external vendors, we will not be able to use them. We will not be able to use AWARE for these reasons until they have gained the trust of the public for their sexuality programs.